The cult of personality, building yourself a more engaging cult for your tabletop role-playing game. Today on Dungeons and Taverns. Hi, I'm Saul Sunforge, and welcome to Dungeons and Taverns. Today's video is on cults in tabletop role-playing games and how to make them more engaging for your players. I was asked this question over Twitter on what specific class other than clerics would make a great cult. Now, my response went to the character limit, but to first answer the question, I said the first class that I would immediately go to for a cult would be a warlock, and the second class I would probably go to would be a sorcerer. The third class I would pick would be druids, and then the fourth class I would probably pick would be monks. That's me, though. You don't have to agree with those decisions. You could change them up, whatever order you like. That's just my initial thoughts. I was going to drop the post and leave it there, but then I thought to myself, how else would I make a cult better than just one class? I first wouldn't limit it to just one class. In order to have a fairly competent cult, it's not like there's going to be a sign that says cult here, do not enter or something like that. And it also would depend on the size of the cult when you introduce it into your campaign world. A smaller cult could act more in secrecy than a bigger cult, obviously. And sometimes for a smaller cult, all you would need is a place out of the way. And that's pretty much it. You could have it in like an abandoned town or a small town, maybe a lawless town, maybe in an abandoned building in the woods, deep into the woods or something. Abandoned castle or keep would work out as well. But if you're trying to seek an engaging cult, a cult that's a little bit bigger, you need more things involved with the cult. The first thing the cult's going to need is resources. So naturally, you'd want to put them somewhere where they have access to a lot of resources. Resources don't necessarily have to be gold currency, but the biggest resource for a cult would be people, because they want to expand the cult. And so in or near a large town with a large population and possibly a smaller guard presence than is necessary for a town of that size would be ideal. So just like a church, the Catholic Church, for instance, you're going to want to have people going out and spreading their tendrils, their influence in other locations that the influence isn't already existing. And so those can be your clerics or your priests, depending on what type of game you're playing. And shady monks that don't have the typical ideal as a traditional monk in the fantasy setting would also work very well. It would have to be somebody who's very charismatic, very good with speech, very good with diplomacy, and very good at convincing people to your side slowly. So public speaking would be a necessity. You wouldn't necessarily want to straight up come out and say, hey, we're a cult, we're recruiting. You'd want to get your message out, and you wouldn't want to seem nefarious with it. So you probably wouldn't want somebody who would appear shady to the initial presentation of them, the first impression. Cult leaders are usually narcissistic, and so the title of their name would be somewhere in the name of the cult. For instance, if their name was like Rose, and it was a female cult leader, you would want to call a cult something like the Rose Petals. And then the secrecy of the cult's hierarchy would be different types of petals. You would want to start out with a more common flower or something like that. And the higher up you are in the hierarchy of the cult, the rarer the petal or the flower would be. Depending on if the cult was battle-hardened, battle-ready, or if they were more pacifist, it would determine what type of people you would want in your cult. If the cult is very big, you could actually have the entire city be the cult, the compound, if you will. So you would have the things of a traditional city. You would have leather workers, armorers, weaponsmiths, armor smiths, possibly bankers. You would need a courier of some sort to relay messages to call other cult members where they're trying to spread the influence of the cult at. To relay secret correspondence that the party could pick up on. If your party's a bunch of do-gooders, then naturally that's a very strong hook that they're going to want to try to maybe possibly infiltrate the cult and topple it from the ground up. But perhaps your players aren't altruistic. Perhaps your players are a little bit more of a chaotic or an evil bent. So they're going to be interested in possibly joining the cult, depending on what the benefits are to them. And then if the party does join the cult can give them quests. It could be another quest hub for the party to make your world and your lore that much richer. Your cult also would probably need muscle, or else how did they become a big cult? Because if they were discovered by anybody and they were a pacifist type cult, then they would be routed out and root to stem and just taken out by the local guard or the constabulary. If you really want to kick up the heat, you can have multiple cults and possibly multiple cults competing for the same area of influence. And then that creates a struggle. Maybe you have saboteurs that are infiltrating the cult from the other cult trying to destroy them. Or maybe you can have two cults vying for the player's attention, and they each offer different rewards, different quests in order to infiltrate the opposite cult or to help spread their influence. Another thing you could do is have a larger cult try to absorb a smaller cult through pressure and influence. Intimidation tactics always work well. The leader of the cult is usually too valuable to go off and do these missions where they're trying to prognosticate and get others to join their cult. Another thing that I like to do is have the cult cause a conflict or some type of struggle in the city and then be the saviors of that struggle that they created themselves with nobody else knowing the wiser. The reason you want to make the leader the most charismatic person in the cult is because once people join the cult, the leader has to keep them there through charismatic means and fear or intimidation to cow lower individuals. But the goal is always the same. The cult leader is trying to get a massive amount of people to follow their own beliefs. You don't have to add a cult to your campaign, of course. You don't have to add anything you don't want to. But I do believe that the system of having at least one cult in your campaign, ideally you would want to have 3 cults in your campaign, will make it far more engaging and rewarding for the players and for you in your campaign. And really, that's most of the work. So hopefully this video helped you. I'm Saul Sunforge. This is Dungeons and Taverns, and have a great day. Thanks for watching.